All right, since we're up and going now at 6 o'clock, let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Edgefield County Council to order on January 2nd at 6 p.m. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. We're going to open with the invocation followed by the pledge. I'll lead the invocation if everyone will please stand. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight and to say thank you. Thank you first for bringing us here tonight to be a part of this meeting. Lord, we ask you to bless us in this new year. We ask you to hold us in your hands and protect us all. Lord, we ask you tonight to give all of us the wisdom and the compassion to do the work we need to do. And now, Lord, we ask all these things in your name. Amen. Please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Council, next is the approval of the agenda. I don't have any recommendations to change anything. Does anyone else have any recommendations to change anything on the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Talbert makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Ireland seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, motion passes unanimously. Next is what we do every January. We have to have the election of the chair and the vice chair. So usually our attorney handles that, but he is on vacation this week. So our administrator will take care of that. There's no swearing in, of course, because we had no election this past November. So I'll turn this part of the meeting over to the administrator.
Okay, well, this is exciting. I've never administered an election before. So this is a two-part process. We will get two different ballots. First, you'll get the ballot for chairman. I'm going to hand these out. You check the box next to the one name that you select for chairman. I'll take those up. We'll count them. Then we'll move to the vice chairman. Congratulations, Chairman Campbell. You were unanimously elected for another term.
Thank you.
So now we'll turn to the vice chairman election. Check the box next to the name you select for vice chairman. Another unanimous vote. Congratulations, Vice Chairman Talbert.
All right, so appreciate that from the administrator, and thank you, council. So next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. First, we'll take them one at a time. First is the December 5th, 2023 regular monthly meeting. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes? Dr. Kenyon makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And Mr. Moody seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, motion passes unanimously. Next is the December 19th, 2023 called meeting. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Ms. Allen makes the motion. Is there a second? Dr. Kenyon seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, motion passes unanimously. Next is our special recognition, the Employee of the Quarter, so I will turn this over to the administrator so he can tell us about this employee.
I would be happy to. Our Employee of the Quarter is Roy Cleveland, Foreman, Roads and Bridges Department, and I would like to read the nomination letter that was sent in for Roy. It says, I would like to recommend Roy Cleveland for the Employee Recognition December Quarter. Roy does an outstanding job for the Roads and Bridges Department. He helps others when they need help. He makes quick and right decisions. Roy works well with other employees and helps with the mechanic work, which saves the county money. Roy has helped with training employees to run the motor grader. Roy was promoted to foreman this year for his knowledge, skills, excellent work ethic, and his dedication to the citizens of Edgefield County. Congratulations to Roy Cleveland, Employee of the Quarter.
Well, council, let's go down and let's have a picture made.
Thank you, and thank you.
All right, council, next on the agenda is comments from the public. I'll ask the clerk, did anyone sign up for the first public comment period? Okay. I will point out that first, these are comments for items on the agenda, this comment period. Second, that if you're here to speak about any, if you're here to speak on what's under the public hearing, and that is the ordinance related to the Planning Commission and how we're changing a little bit of that. If you're here to speak on that, you want to speak in the public hearing, not in the public comment section. So with that, and I'll remind everybody, it's a 5-minute limit, so the clerk gives you a notice at 4 minutes and then at 5 minutes. So with that, we did have one person who signed up. Is it David?
You probably want to wait.
You want to wait to the public hearing then? Okay, that's you then that signed up. Okay, just making sure. All right, so council, nobody else signed up for the public comment period. So we'll be back with you in just a second on that. Reports are next. Council, any comments or questions on the reports? Okay, hearing none. We'll go to the public hearing. This is ordinance number 21-23-786, an ordinance to amend Chapter 24, Land Development Sections 24-248, 251, 252, 285, and 286 of the Edgefield County Code of Ordinances, including application, major subdivisions, land development other than a subdivision, county planning administrator, and county planning commission. So is there anyone here to speak on that ordinance? And I think you're at least one person. Yes. So this is your time.
I'm David Hare, and Mr. Talbert is my representative on the county council, and we're real pleased to have him here. In representative being the right word. He always seems to listen to what the folks in his district think and want and act accordingly in the dealings I've had. And my opinion is by the way this plan commission thing has been voted, they've taken representative out of the government and to the people out of the process. And they basically made themselves irrelevant. And I would ask that y'all do not approve that change and leave things like they are so people actually have their representatives in the districts and can go to those people. Because as it is now, if one person's making a decision, there's no reason for these other people to even listen to anybody. So I would ask that y'all leave it alone and don't approve the change. Thank y'all.
Okay, thank you. Next, yes. Is anybody else here to speak on that topic? Okay. Please come up and introduce yourself, please.
My name is Jake Harrison. I live in Sweetwater Creek. Yeah, I concur with him. I'm not really sure why we're trying to shift it from less involvement from the people. I mean, it's the public commission, public planning commission. I may not agree with everything they do, but it seems like it gives it more diverse opinions and involves more of the public into the decision making. I think it's just better to have that protection. There's nothing wrong, nothing personal with any person that we don't like or don't trust, but I still think you have a lot of safeguards when you spread that. I would highly recommend keeping it with the public planning commission, not just one individual. And I hope my representative would do that, would feel the same way. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else here to speak in this public hearing? Yes. Please come up and introduce yourself.
I'm Kathy Eckery, Sandy Springs Road. I agree that Carleen Butler is my representative on planning. It does take an interruption on changing the final authority to put it to one person. My concern is, I think Trestle Run is a perfect example of how things can go awry real quick without having some kind of input, some kind of check and balance so that folks can at least figure out what's going on instead of having one final authority that does not come up for some kind of public discussion. So I am against changing how the Planning Commission is going to decide things. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else here to speak in this public hearing on this topic? Okay. Seeing no one else, council, I will close the public hearing then, and we will move into old business. And under old business, number 1 is consideration of the approval of third reading of ordinance 21-23-783 to amend Chapter 6, the Animals, Sections 6-21 and 6-22 of the Edgefield County Code of Ordinances. I'll ask the administrator if there's anything since second reading that we need to consider.
There's no new information.
Okay. Any questions or comments on council for this one? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to give third reading to ordinance number 21-23-783?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Talbot makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Moody seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, motion passes unanimously. Next is number 2 under old business, and that is consideration of approval of second reading of ordinance 21-23-786, which is the same, now the rest of it's the same title I just read a moment ago in the public hearing. So this is the ordinance that everyone was just talking about in the public hearing. So I will turn to the administrator first and ask anything from him or the assistant administrator who couldn't make the last meeting because of illness, but he's back now, so there may be new information or information we need to know. So I'll turn it over to you too.
So there's just 2 points I want to make on this. These changes to the land development ordinance were voted on by the Planning Commission. They were approved by the Planning Commission, and they were advanced to council for consideration by the Planning Commission. So this is not an attempted seizure of power from the Planning Commission. They recognized that their role was more suitably in planning, suggesting new regulations, new ordinances, and not individual project approval. They will still play a role in that, however. The second point is the public will continue to have a voice because nothing changes in terms of holding a public hearing, a planning commission study session with the developer, and the ability of the planning commission to question and even negotiate with the developer. And our staff also questions and negotiates with developers. But we do need to ensure that if we deny a project, it's based on the regulations. If we approve a project, it's based on the regulations. And I'll turn it over to Hart Clark if he has anything to add to that.
So the primary thing that I would like to say is that this does not change the legislative authority of the Planning Commission. So the primary duties of the Planning Commission are comprehensive planning and writing our land development regulations such as zoning, setbacks, etc. None of that changes. Also, the public hearing process is unchanged. So every development that's applied for will still go through the exact same process they go through right now. They will still post the property, they will still have a public hearing, they will still have a work session, and they will still have a vote. The only thing that's changing is that the final decision on whether it is a legal or illegal preliminary plat will come from my office rather than from the Planning Commission. That's the only change, other than an appeal process that is being put in on the county side that gives the developer the ability to appeal my decision directly to the Planning Commission should I deny them in a way that they feel is unjust. Other than that, there are no substantive changes to the way the Planning Commission will operate. They will still have 21 days of public notice that will be put in the paper. They will still have a public hearing. The Planning Commission will still be able to sit down with the developer, discuss the project, make recommendations, have work sessions. They will even still be able to ask the developer to extend their approval period. As y'all know, the state of South Carolina gives us 60 days. We have to issue a final decision in 60 days or the state considers that plat automatically approved. So the only way that can be extended is by mutual agreement between the county and the developer. So they will still have that power. And then all of their legislative authority. So let's say, for an example, a development comes in, the Planning Commission hears in the public hearing, they make their recommendation to me, and I find 3 things that they didn't like, and I say, no, well, they meet this regulation, they meet that regulation, and the Planning Commission was under the impression that that regulation meant something else. They will literally have a list in their hand of what laws and regulations they need to recommend changes on in front of them. So it has some added benefits there as well. That's all I really have to say. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Let me, if I can, Counsel, let me ask a couple of clarifying questions here that may help us all. So, and I'll ask Mr. Clark these questions. So, this new ordinance doesn't cover all the authority, decision-making for the Planning Commission. It only gives you certain authority on certain things like major subdivisions.
So even on major subdivisions, it's not that major of a change. It is only a change to the preliminary plat approval process. All the other things that Planning Commission does is still exactly the same as it is now. This changes the legal stamping of the preliminary plat approval from the Planning Commission to me. Now, obviously during the final plat approval, that process is a lot more complicated because you already have the engineering done, you've already submitted DHEC, you have environmental submissions, you have the water and sewer authorities involved, you have all these other entities involved. Typically, if I don't get, I'll use Fox Run, for example. That was over there off of Shortcut on Copeland. It was approved by the Planning Commission, but as y'all have probably noticed, it never got developed. The reason for that is DHEC gave a approval for stormwater, but that was contingent on approval from DHEC, DOT, to put that stormwater under the road. Well, they never could get the encroachment from DOT to put that stormwater pipe under the road. So I simply denied it outright, and it never came to back to the Planning Commission for any sort of change or edit because they simply could not meet a state regulation. And so basically it just died on my desk. Well, now that would actually come back to the Planning Commission and they would get a report saying, hey, XYZ subdivision, failed to make this adjustment or failed to get this approval, etc. But to be clear, the only thing it changes is who signs the preliminary plat. That's it.
But I guess my other point, though, is, because I think there's some misconception among the public, and that is that you will be making all the decisions for the Planning Commission, but I think you've told me before that based on, if you look at 2023 as a total, the Planning Commission probably made double the amount of decisions that you did because they have the authority to do and they'll still have the decision-making on other things.
All of their applications to amend the comp plan, all of their applications to amend zoning, all of their applications to amend other land development items, all of that still remains the same, and all of those items are still solely in their jurisdiction. I do have the authority to make an application directly to county council as it is, but there's no reason for me to skip the Planning Commission process. So all of my applications would go through the Planning Commission to council. Because if I didn't, y'all would just tell me to go through the Planning Commission. So,
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are developers who come to you, some this past year, who gave you some preliminary information about a development they wanted to do, and you looked at it and you said, well, it doesn't meet this regulation and this ordinance and whatever, and then they decided they didn't want to do it. And the public never knew about it because you made the decision, which is part of your job.
It happens all the time. So most developers feel if they can't get past staff, there's no point spending the money to make the official application. Just to give you an example, if a PUD was applied for and I was completely dissatisfied with it, let's say that I wrote up a half a dozen things that they didn't meet that they needed to, and they demanded to come to county council for that plan development anyway. The first thing I'm going to do is stand up in the meeting and tell y'all all the things that they've done wrong. So most developers won't proceed to the actual application if they can't get through my preliminary review, simply because it would be a waste of money to do so.
And I guess my last question is, when you're, I'll call it checking the boxes of all the things that need to be done for a major subdivision, all of your checks, if you will, are what I call fact-based. They're not, or are they opinion-based? Which do you use, your opinion or fact?
They are completely fact-based. So my review is all about the text of the law. And if I'm not sure, then I send it to our attorney and get an opinion directly from our attorney. You can't judge property rights based on people's opinion, no matter how much people may wish that were otherwise. Your property rights are constitutional. It has to be a legal decision in the end.
Thank you. I'll open up to council then. Questions? Any questions, comments?
I have none, but I do definitely appreciate your expertise and your comment of clarifying it. I notice a lot of our citizens kind of confused, and hearing what you just now indicated, I hope that it will enlighten a lot of our, people here in Edgefield County.
Well, I'm always available, so they can call me, email me, whatever. I'm happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you, Doc.
I've got a couple comments. I thought you were talking about Doc.
I'm sorry.
No,
y'all.
I'm sorry, no. No. He makes great points, like I said, but I've talked to Doc about this, and there's two things that I have problems with. Anderson Point would have 84 houses right now, what I call cookie cutter houses. There's no character to them. When you're washing your car, you gotta be careful. not to get the water on your neighbor's car, because that's how close the houses are. But I think by public input, we got it down to 33. That's my point number one. Point number two, I'm up here to represent y'all. Y'all, people that have contacted me don't want it, so that's why I'm voting no.
I have a few comments if did you want, okay, if I may. First of all, I want to, point out a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to say that Doc nor his office asked for this change. So I want that to be clear. Doc did not come to us soliciting that, hey, this be changed, nor did any of the staff from the planning department come to us and ask us to change this. And like he said, and Chairman has said, these decisions will be based on laws, not what he wants or doesn't want. Any decisions made here has nothing to do, for me, and I don't think for any of us, with trust. We trust our employees. We have impeccable staff. I'm just, again, going to say I'll put our employees up against anybody's, any county, anywhere. We've got great staff. Has nothing to do with trust. Again, they must follow the laws, and let me remind you, those laws were laws that PC, the Planning Commission, helped to write and to put into place. So if you're not happy with the way things are going or the laws that you're seeing, talk to somebody on PC. That's where it starts. That's where you need to start. This process, like he already said, doesn't change anything. No decision by the planning department will be made until after the planning commission has weighed in on it and until after there has been a public hearing. And then Doc will make his decision. Or April. So I want to ask you, Doc, if there is something, and I know you talked about this a while ago, but say there, like this last controversial development that we had, and we had some members bring up some laws or things that they thought you missed. So if that happens again and you hear them bring up points, you can ask to hold off, right? You don't have to make a decision then. You can go back and research these points that they have brought up.
So, I mean, obviously, we're still stuck in the 60-day window that we have to make our final decision. But if Planning Commission were to say, bring up a law, for example, that I had not considered or I missed in my review, I could ask the chairman to have a called meeting still within that 60-day window before rendering my final decision. The only caveat to that is that I would have to have the Planning Commission agree to call another meeting, as you cannot discuss evidence, basically, in a quasi-judicial setting without the applicant present. So as long as the Planning Commission agreed to have a called meeting within that remaining time, because, you know, we have to use 21 days for advertisement. So, you know, half of our time is used in advertisement and then our regular meeting. So as long as it was within that 30-day period, yes, we could have another meeting, and then I could render my final decision at that meeting and allow people to know, you know, this is what you brought up. This is how I interpret this law. And if I weren't sure, then of course I could provide them with the attorney's opinion on it.
And again, we've heard that this was a knee-jerk or in reaction to the litigation that we are currently facing. We've also heard that and I know you guys have received these emails, just 2, I think, emails that we all maybe received. But the thing that it was mentioned in those was that if we do this, then we'll never see another major subdivision turned down ever again. I'd just like to remind, since we are bringing up this current litigation in that property, that the building Doc had put zoning on that would not have allowed this current subdivision to come into it. Doc did that. And then he went back and further put on a tighter zoning that would have allowed even less houses to come in on it. It was changed because the public asked us to change it. They asked us to take that zoning off. He put that in place to protect it against the major subdivision. So I don't think it's fair to say if we turn the power, we're never going to be able to say no to a major subdivision again. This comes back to the planning part. And this comes back to where I want to reiterate and encourage the planning to be happening. So the things that we don't want, that we hear the citizens saying they don't want, can be stopped by giving it the teeth it needs. At the end of the day, though, for me, this is not an issue that is objective, it is subjective. There is no right or wrong, there is no legal or illegal here. I don't have a problem with changing this process to give our building and planning department this authority. But, and again, I think our staff is very competent, capable. However, because there was not a unanimous decision on the Planning Commission, and because those dissenting votes were from members who were in my district, and one of which was my appointee to the Planning Commission, I will honor their vote here by voting against this. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Council, any other questions or comments from anyone? Okay. Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote, Council. Is there a motion to give second reading to ordinance number 21-23-786? Mr. Talbot makes the motion, and I'll second it. Any further discussion on this ordinance? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 4. Okay, all opposed? All right, let the record show the second reading passed 3-2 with council members Ireland and Moody voting against. And then, council, we move to item number 3. This is consideration of approval of the second reading of ordinance 21-23-784 to amend Chapter 2, Administrative Section 2-21, Compensation of the Edgefield County Code of Ordinances. So let me explain this first. This was on the agenda last month, and for those who keep up and on these things, we discussed this. This has to do with giving cost of living increases for county council members. Heretofore has not been done before. And in the discussion last month, Mr. Moody was going to suggest and was suggesting an amendment. I think it was my issue. I know it was my issue. I didn't quite explain well where we were in the voting process. So when I did that, after our discussion on it, a motion was made to approve this, but there was never a second. Without a second, that means it was like it never happened. It didn't pass, it didn't fail. It's almost like if I would have said, we'll take this as information and take it up at the next meeting. That's the essence of what it would be. So, for fairness, I wanted to bring it back and put it on the agenda for council to consider, and council can always turn it down. But I wanted to make sure that we had a fair opportunity because of my mistake in administering how we were talking about it. So that's on me. So that said, we're going to take it up again tonight. And so I'll ask first the administrator if there's anything we need to know about this since we discussed it some last time.
Thank you. I do have a little bit of new information. At last council meeting, I reported that our council pay was right at the average of all counties in population group 4. And that's because the salary study that we have to review is from 2022. So I was comparing our 2023 numbers to 2022 numbers. Well, I requested the Association of Counties give me the 2023 numbers that they have not yet published. And using the 2023 data for population group 4, that's a population group that's similar in size to us, our average county council member salary is about $1,000 lower than the average. It is within the norm. It is squarely in the group of counties, but it would be around the bottom 35–40%. but those numbers are new information, so I wanted to share that today. If council chooses to approve this, any cost of living increase would also have to be voted on during the budget process. We have a budget ordinance that takes 3 readings, and it would have to be clearly designated in that budget ordinance, and the increase would not apply to council's pay until the 1st January after a general election. And that's all.
Okay. I'll open the floor for council questions or comments.
I would just like to remind everyone that this was a huge issue when we first talked about it, when we gave ourselves, if you will, the raise way back, because we hadn't had a raise. Council had not had a raise in 25 years. And there was much debate. I think you remember, Miss Kathy, you were here for that. There was much debate at that time over this issue. And I said back then that I did not want to see us get in that hole again where we were playing catch up after 25 years, because that's a lot of amount to catch up on. And I said, I would like to see us some way come up with an idea where we're not doing that anymore. And I think this is probably the best, for me, I think it's the best way to do this is to loop it in so we're not playing catch up again. So that's just what I have to say.
And I want to just add one thing onto that. When we had that discussion about the pay raise, and we had a public hearing, we had a parade of people come up and discuss it. And not all, but almost all of them said the same thing. If you just give yourselves an increase as you go through the years, you wouldn't be in this pickle. And you've done this to yourselves. So why not just give yourselves a cost of living increase or whatever percentage so you don't have this 25 years from now or any other time? So, again, I was a little surprised by that, but that was the consensus of most of the speakers who talked to us that night. So, hence, here we are tonight.
And this is not voting on a raise for us tonight.
Right.
I think we should be clear about that.
Good point.
Yeah, this is not voting for ourselves a raise tonight. This is not what that is. This is just when we do, at budget process, vote for a cost of living for employees, because we are employees of the county. So when we do vote for that cost of living increase, we will be included in that at that point, not today, not now. So I just want to make that clear.
Could I add one additional thing? All other elected officials that are part of county government do participate in the county cost of living increase.
I think we are the only exemptions.
Yeah.
And we're self-exempted. I mean, we exempted ourselves years ago, and we've never been in there. All right, I'm going to look at Mr. Moody. I know you had a...
Could you explain my proposed amendment now? Or
Well, two questions. First, you wanted to make an amendment last time. I assume you want to make an amendment this time.
Yes.
Before we get to that point, then, what I'd like to do, council, is ask for a motion and a second to get us into the official discussion stage. Therefore, we could consider an amendment. So just for purposes of discussion, is there a motion to give second reading to ordinance number 21-23-784?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Talbot makes a motion. Is there a second? Okay, Dr. Kenyon seconds. Now, under discussion, I will turn the floor over to Mr. Moody.
I would like to propose an amendment, and my amendment is a 2% max for the total of 2 years. Say the county employees get a 3% next budget, and then a 2%. Ours take a place every 2 years, so that's 5%. I want to cap it at 2% total for the 2 years. So the most council will ever get is 2%, irregardless of what the county employees get. That's my amendment.
For clarification, the 2% is not 2% each of the years. It's the 2 years combined is 2%.
2% total.
Because we can't get a raise but every 2 years, basically. That's the way it works for us, because you have to do it after an election according to state law. Have I got that? So that's Mr. Moody's amendment. He makes that a motion. Is there a second?
Can I just add, can I discuss something first?
Can you do a second first? Or
Well,
you wanna get some clarification
I
before
just
you
want
know
to
if you wanna?
clarify, yeah, I just want a clarification here. So if we do the cap, but we would still, say we do the amendment and we say there's a cap, but we still have to vote on it. So let's just say we're not on here anymore, and there's another council comes on, they could take our cap off though, correct? At that next, so every cycle, we got to reassign the cap. Am I correct on that? Do you see what I'm saying here?
This is a standalone ordinance here, so this cap would be put in place by ordinance, and it would limit what we could add in the budget ordinance itself.
But a future council could
Could.
change
They could
this
amend
ordinance.
This ordinance,
Right,
yes.
okay.
But this ordinance is separate and distinct from the budget ordinance.
And so we won't have to do this again at budget time then? We won't,
At budget time, we would have to clearly indicate how much of a percent council would receive
gotcha.
based on what the employees receive. Yes.
Just want that to be clear for everybody.
Okay, there's a motion to amend this ordinance. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Now we're in the discussion, excuse me, Ms. Ireland, seconds. Now we're in the discussion phase for the amendment only. So for the amendment, I'll turn to Mr. Moody. Is there any other additional discussion you'd like to have on it?
And like I said, even like it's been mentioned, every year during budget, we have to vote to honor this ordinance, correct?
That is correct.
Right, okay, during the budget process.
Council does not receive any increase in any way, shape,
Right.
or form unless it is clearly indicated in the budget ordinance.
And like Tiffany said earlier, 25 years caught everybody off guard. And this, the way I figured, 2% will keep us in the 11-county group that we're in, and I think 2% is honorable for what council.
So for clarity, again, because the administrator's going to have to write this in a very legal fashion with the attorney. So here's another example. I want to make sure that I'm understanding what the intent of the amendment is. So let's pretend for a moment that in 1 year we give employees a 0.5% raise. And the next year we give them a 0.5% raise. So in 2 years they've had 1%. Do we still get 2%?
No. 1% with a 2%
1%.
cap.
We would get
It
the
would
1.
be capped at 2%.
Capped at 2%.
So you would get 1%.
Okay, so it's tied to the employees up to 2%, then it's not tied anymore. And
Right.
That is correct.
so they got, if employees got 1% 1 year and 1% the next year, that's 2%. We'd all get the same thing
That is correct.
in that 2-year cycle.
But if they got 5%, we would still only get the 2%.
Correct. If we gave it 5 and 5, that would give employees 10% over 2 years. We'd still get 2% over 2 years.
I just want to tell y'all that I did talk to an employee today about this, and they shared that they wouldn't mind us being tied in with them because it would encourage us to give the employees better, increases. So that was just an employee's take on it.
Tiffany,
So.
Tiffany, you can look at it this way. The 3% we're not getting can go to the employees.
Well, I'm just sharing what an employee shared with me.
They are getting
so
it.
I'm
They
just
are
saying,
getting it.
yeah, but I'm just
So-
saying, you know, it
It
encourages.
might turn their 3 into a 4.
So, but I'm fine with the cap. So that, you know, my goal was just to never see us get in a 25-year hole again. I don't want to play that kind of catch up again. I don't want to, and then that's not fair to a future council either, to put them in the position that we were in. We should not have been in that position. It was not fair.
Let me get,
Well, I would like to say, I wouldn't like to get back in that predicament we was in a couple of years ago. 'Cause, I mean, it took a lot to try to straighten it out. And so I definitely don't want to go. So if everybody agree with the cap or whatever, I mean, you know, I have no problem.
let me ask the administrator one last question on this, make sure, again, we're all on the same page. So let's pretend for a moment that this either passes or doesn't matter, because either it's going to be a 2% cap or we're going to get 1 employees at this point, unless there's another amendment. Those are the two options. So either way, my question would be, so let's pretend it passes at whatever, when there's going to be an increase for county council every year, but we can't get it but every second year. Is then in the budget process itself, after this passes, even the budget process itself, council could say, you know what, we don't want to give ourselves even 2% this year or over the 2 years. We want to deny ourselves because of whatever.
If this amendment passes, there would be a 2% cap. There's no restriction in council giving themselves less. This is a ceiling. You're voting on a ceiling in this amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the amendment? Okay, we're voting on the amendment only. So this is the amendment. So we already had a motion and a second on the amendment and discussion. All those in favor of the amendment, which is the 2% cap, signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Then the motion passes unanimously for the cap. So the amendment passes. So we're back to the main motion, which is the second reading of ordinance number 21-23-784. Any questions or comments on the ordinance as amended? Hearing none. All those in favor of giving second reading to ordinance number 21-23-784, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Next is new business, and under new business, we have consideration of approval of a revised building and planning fee schedule and to link the square footage valuation of construction to the International Code Council's building valuation data service. So, of course, I'm going to ask the administrator to give us some details here, please.
So we propose to update the building and planning fee schedule primarily in terms of land development application fees and re-inspection fees. But most importantly, we want to index the price per square foot valuation to the International Code Council values that are published every 3 years. This is similar to us linking other things like our per diem to some type of index. Our current single-family residence value per square foot is $88. That is very, very low. The ICC value, also fairly low, is $130. To put this in context, the price per square foot to construct a restroom facility with a concrete floor was $169 per square foot for Bettis Park. The $88 value, again, comes nowhere close to the current cost of construction. The building and permit fees should collect enough to fund a substantial portion of operations. And for a long while, they did. But over the last few years, we have fallen behind on the operation cost of our building and planning department. And that has a lot to do with the amount of construction and the cost of it. That's all.
And for clarity here, the international code is something that we have always used and tied to.
So the International Code Council is the person who writes the codes for the states, and then the state adopts it. So the 2021 International Residential Code or International Building Code is then adopted by the state. However, the state does not adopt any of the appendices, such as fee schedules, etc. That is left up to the local jurisdictions to determine. And their reasoning for that is there's no way for them on the state level to know what the needs of each individual building department is to set those fees. So other than the appendices, the state adopts the code, and then we have to adopt the rest. This fee schedule is one of the appendices of our state building code.
And this fee schedule is what a developer or someone, a contractor, someone pays to build something.
So most of our larger contractors, they will actually hand me a contract that's signed by the buyer that says this is what they're paying for it. But oftentimes, smaller contractors or contractors who are, from out of state, they'll give their build cost instead of their actual construction, their complete contract price. This basically says that you can't calculate your cost per square foot on your contract for less than this amount. So if you brought it in and said, I'm gonna build a 5,000 square foot house for $80,000, right now, all I can do is say, well, let me times that by 88. No, this is the minimum you can use. This just increases that minimum to whatever the ICC says it is. And the ICC schedule is broken down by type of construction and what the building's use actually is. So you have occupancy and type of construction, and it's a long chart. But it gets updated on the national level every 3 years, which is why I recommend that we adopt it, because this $88 was probably approved in the 80s or the 90s and has never been looked at again until now.
Council, questions or comments?
That was gonna be my next question. Is this thing gonna automatically update yearly for we won't be at
Every
88?
3 years.
For we won't be using a 1988 schedule?
Yes, so
Okay.
every 3 years, they'll put out a new edition
Okay.
of it, and that will automatically update. Now, our other fees on the schedule will still have to come back to council to update. So, for instance, I'm doubling the reinspection fees is one of my recommendations. If I wanted to double them again in the future, then I would have to come back and y'all would have to approve that individually. The only other major change in there is I added the $10 administration fee to planning items. As of right now, they only apply to building items. Our admin fee is to pay for the software in our office, and the planning uses it just as much as the building, yet we don't charge the admin fee on planning items. So somebody comes in with a major subdivision, they're not paying that fee. Whereas if you come in to build a deck on your house, you're paying that fee. Just trying to make it even across the board, everybody's paying that fee. And then I increased the cost of subdivision plat approvals across the board, simply because we're behind on it. And then a communication towers fee, I added that.
Other questions or comments from council? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the revised building and planning fee that we've discussed?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Mr. Moody makes a motion, Mr. Talbot seconds. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, motion passes unanimously. Next, under new business, is the consideration of approval of Resolution 23-24-002 to extinguish revisionary rights to the former Manor House property. So, of course, I'll ask the administrator if he'd explain this one, please.
So we have prepared a quitclaim deed to transfer the Manor House property back to Christy Colbreth. This was per council's decision back in May 2023. We just didn't do it. But she had purchased this property long ago to restore it or renovate it into a retirement-type facility. We're asking council to pass this resolution tonight to eliminate any reversionary rights that the county holds on this property. Meaning, if she doesn't hit some type of marker, we can't take the property back. So she would own it free and clear, without condition. And a good reason to do this is that there are certain liabilities with this old derelict building that when we take the property back, we assume these liabilities. And it is my opinion that we shouldn't do that, so we recommend approval.
Questions or comments from council?
I will say I was sitting out there when this first came up many moons ago, and this was first approved, and it had this stipulation attached to it, and I remember thinking, we've never done that before. Why? Why was this done? And I've asked around, and I don't think it ever was. I think this was a precedent setting where we put this clause in there. No one's really sure why it got stuck in there, and it's not doing us any good because we really don't want that building and all that the trouble it's going to bring to come back to us. So for me, it makes sense to just to do this. I'd never seen this in anything we had done before. It was a weird little clause that got put in there. And, yeah, we're just letting go of liability issues here. But she still will be accountable for following all of our guidelines for this. I, again, want to say this process seems to have drug out for a long time with this building. I really hope she gets this facility built. I really want to see that out there. So I hope we can get some movement on that. But yeah, I'd like to take us out of the equation.
Other questions or comments from council? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 23-24-002?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Talbot makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And Ms. Ireland seconds. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That is the end of new business, council. We're to public comments, number 2 section. I'll ask the clerk, did anybody sign up for this section? All right, council, nobody signed up for this public comment section, so I will close that and move to report from county council members. Does any county council member have a report for tonight?
It's not a report, but I'd just like to give one of Doc's employees a big thank you, April Morgan. I had it wasn't even my constituents, it was in Tiffany's district, called me, talking about rollback taxes, and they were beating their head up against the wall. They've made 4 or 5 phone calls, came into a dead end, so I called Doc. He said, call April. And April spent countless hours getting this man's problem resolved, and I just want to thank her. Please do.
Any other questions, reports, Okay, hearing none, thank you. We will then move to the administrator's report.
Thank you. Bettis Park, the new restroom facilities and the press box are being constructed now. We expect completion in about 2 months. The picnic shelter that we've ordered, I've signed the contract on that, and the construction build time is mid-February to mid-March. The baseball field infield refurbishments, and there are 5 baseball fields out there, that will be completed in March. And I just got word that the new playground equipment that we ordered will be delivered in March. If the public may recall, we received an $800,000 apportionment from the state to invest into Bettis Park for improvements. And we are hard at work improving that park now, and I believe it's, by the end of the year, going to look really different and look really nice. Scout Park, the shelter and playground will both be delivered in early March. I'm in discussions right now with both dance instructors and martial arts instructors to offer various county rec programs in that facility. And we will explore, or I'll take ideas for any other type of county rec programs. The Law Enforcement Center is on schedule despite some of the recent heavy rains, and it's really taking shape. It's coming along nicely. So we're excited about that. On our website, last meeting, I think council approved Foster Crowder to spend 5 hours a week on website improvement and design. Well, he started with individual departments, and he's done a great job with that. He was working on it today, and I really think that was a good decision. I think our website's going to be drastically improved in short order. Firefighter Level 1, we have 16 firefighters enrolled in the Level 1 class that will start this month. These students will receive a training stipend that was approved by council during the last budget cycle. This is part of our initiative to ensure well-trained firemen in the county. Previous trainings, as you know, have included medical response and hazardous materials. So once we graduate this firefighter Level 1 class, we will begin to offer a Level 2 class, and then we'll start the cycle over again. Budget packets will go out to department heads and elected officials in about a week so that we can begin development of the 2024-25 budget. So we'll be hard at work on that over the next couple of months. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the administrator?
I have one thing. As y'all probably know, the state gets a monthly census from the Building and Planning Department, for the school system, for the road system, et cetera, so that they know how much construction's going on, where it's going on, that sort of thing. I don't typically provide that on a month-by-month basis to y'all. So this year, at the close of 2023, I just wanted to put all of that data in one little booklet, so that if y'all get any kind of questions about growth trends, about, number of buildings built, where they're being built, that sort of stuff, you can find that answer in this little book, and I'm going to pass these out to y'all at the end of the meeting, and that's all I have.
Great, thank you.
And I'd also like to recognize Building and Planning Department won our contest over Christmas. We had an employee contest for decorating doors. Building and Planning won. If y'all didn't see that door, y'all missed out. That was a working snow globe on that door. Just saying. Would we expect anything less from y'all? No, but I'm just saying.
Want to point out
It was
that
amazing.
other than giving my blessing, I had nothing to do with
It was great. It was
They are
amazing.
very artistic in my office,
Oh.
and I just stay out of the way and try not to get run over.
The uses for a blow dryer. Who knew? It's great.
All right. Anything else from the administrator or assistant administrator tonight? All right. Council, if there are no questions or any more comments from them, we'll move to the chairman's comments, and I have just a few items. First, I want to say thank you for reelecting me as chairman. I appreciate the confidence you're showing in me. I'm starting my 14th consecutive year on county council tonight, and tonight marks the 10th time I've been elected as chairman. So I'm very humbled and very eager to serve, and I encourage you to continue to reach out to me and each other as we work together for the citizens of Edgefield County. Second, I want to recognize tonight our clerk to council, Aretha Eubanks. Tomorrow, she celebrates her one-year anniversary as our clerk. So congratulations. And finally, I want to announce that we had the annual Edgefield County Intergovernmental Meeting on January 29th at 5:30 p.m. at the Edgefield County Senior Citizen Center Dining Room. It's a time where we learn what many other organizations are doing in the county and how we can work together to support other elected officials, elected and appointed officials. So also, I know we all wish for every one of our citizens a happy and prosperous new year. And council, there being no other business to conduct tonight, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ms. Ireland makes a motion and Dr. Kenyon seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. A little over an hour.
That wasn't too bad.
I'm glad you two were close together.
Oh.
So in February, we have to approve the committees. So I was going to